Hello everyone, welcome to Anthropology Analytica. I am Dr. Arjun Bopanna, your anthropology faculty at Insights IAS. So in the previous video, I had given this following question: discuss the importance of common property resource in tribal area and analyze the threat faced by it. It's a 15 marker question. So let's see what you are expected to write in this particular question. So first, your introduction should define what is a common property resource and give some examples of the same. And then you write the importance of the common property resource. Okay, so importance from the economic point of view, importance from the cultural, socio-cultural point of view, okay, importance from conservation point of view, you can write. And then the question is also asking, analyze the threat faced by it. So next you are going to write the threats faced by it. Okay, so it could be because of the government legislature, it could be because of the change in the culture, etc. And the conclusion, try to give some solution as to how this particular threat can be addressed. Okay, since it is only the question is asking you analyze, the conclusion need not be very big. About 2 to 3 sentences of conclusion is enough. The main focus of your answer should be on the importance of common property resource and the threat faced by it, and you need to substantiate your points with case studies. So as many case studies as possible you should write to substantiate or strengthen your argument. Is that okay? So case studies comes to help in this way. See, you need to argue a case, and then you need to argue or give some points, and to strengthen those points or strengthen those argument, you give case studies. You understood? So that's the utility of case studies. So find such case studies which are useful to strengthen your argument. All right, so what is this common property resource of tribes? So basically these are properties that is not owned individually, that is owned by the community, owned by the group. The group decides how the resource is going to be utilized, who is going to be using that resources. Okay, the access to a particular resources is decided by the community. Such resource is called as common property resource. Okay, you can give examples. See, for example, the grazing lands that are present, okay, in the tribal areas are an example of common property resource. Similarly, lakes that are there where fishing is, some tribes who are involved in fishing depend upon that lake. Nobody owns that lake. The community owns that lake, and the community gives the right to fish in those lakes to individuals. So that is what is community property resource. Now, having understood this community property resource and giving examples, let's see the importance of community property resource. So again, you need to classify. Whenever you write a bold heading saying that importance of community property, right, and resources, and then you write down 1, 2, 3. So within that subheadings, economic importance. So obviously, because it is a resource, it is having an economic importance. It's important for livelihood purpose. It is important for the earning for trading purpose, etc. So let's have a look at what are the various importance. So economic importance, social importance, cultural. So for example, livelihood, this is the data that is there in India. About 17,000 villages with a total population of 147 million depends upon community property. So that shows that the significance or importance of community property. And it's true even for the tribals, because tribals don't have the concept of individual ownership, right? So therefore, whatever resources the tribals own are generally owned by the community, either by the lineage or by the clan or the village itself. So that kind of ownership of resources makes it very important for their livelihood. Further, several of their cultural rituals, practices, etc. depend upon these communally owned resources. Say for example, marriages are performed over there, religious festivals are performed over there, conducted over there. and their totem may be present over there. Okay, say for example, Thodas, they own their communal grazing land. The grazing lands are owned communally. So that's an example, right? And where the buffalo is their totem, again, is very much linked with their communal property. Then it also is important for maintaining ecological balances. So utilization and sustainable management, because it is owned by the community. Okay, many of these resources are preserved. See, for example, you can write tribes in South India, they have been preserving these forests land because it's a community resource. It's called as Devarakadu, and they preserve this because they believe that their deity lies, or the deities are there in these forests or in these lands. So because of this kind of ownership, if it was individually owned, probably it would be threatened and they would face extinction or it would be destroyed. Similarly, it also provides sustainable management of these resources, because each and every community has its own experience and knowledge. Together, all of them are involved in their preservation and conservation. For example, the Bishnoi community of Rajasthan is an example where you would see that the community came together to fight against poachers. Similarly, better management of resources for the next generation can happen when the community owns such kind of resources, because they are always going to look out for the future generation, etc. So these are the importance culturally, economically, ecologically, the need or the importance of your community property resources for the tribals. But unfortunately, over the years, because of lack of recognition or lack of legal protection to these community property rights, they are facing threats. So, for example, the community property resources has declined, okay, by 26 to 63%, depending on what data you're going to use. So, around 50%, 60% of the community resources have been facing threat or has declined or has disappeared, okay, in the last 3 decades, in the last 30, 40 years. We have seen decline in the forest resource or community property resources. The reasons are because of lack of consensus with respect to ownership. Who owns the land? Okay, so there is no, sometimes what happens when there is a difference of opinion among the members of the community, so it leads to nobody managing such resources. We have seen like lakes and grazing lands, etc. When nobody has proper ownership, nobody wants to take up the effort to conserve it. Similarly, it is not recorded as community property, rather it is recorded as government land. Whenever there is need for land for public purpose, the government will will take over these community resources and use it for various purpose. See, for example, resettlement of refugees from Burma or from Sri Lanka, etc. The land that was used was community property resource, and most of these resources were owned by the tribals, and therefore when they are brought, the refugees are brought and placed in these community property resource, the tribes are displaced. So this leads to internal refugees because of external refugees. Similarly, neglect by policymakers, they don't take any effort to conserve it. There is loss of biological diversity, biodiversity, as a result of which it has eroded their material base. The kind of earnings they used to get from these communal resources has been depleting, and therefore there is no incentive for the community to protect them. Okay, say for example, let's take a lake. Okay, earlier the community was dependent on the lake for their livelihood, for their food requirement, etc. But what has happened? Let's say lake pollution has taken place. It has led to biodiversity loss of the lake. So the fish that they could catch from their lake has reduced. All this has led to the people losing benefit from that lake, and when they lose benefit, they do not conserve it. Displacement of the tribals, loss of tribal tradition and culture, like Devarakadu. Okay, tribals have lost their cultural practices. They don't believe anymore. The next generation don't believe that the deity is there in those places, or they got converted into some other religion which does not give same importance to this particular resource. Then development projects roads and highways and expressways, etc., all have been built, and when land is required for that, community property are utilized. Privatization of these lands, ineffective local democratic institutions, panchayati raj institutions or the gram sabha, village panchayats, all these have could have protected these community property, but they do not. Okay, so they also have failed in protecting and preserving it because they are mainly focused on preserving individual rights. Similarly, customary laws which gives rights to the community are not codified. When it is not codified, again there is discrepancies, or how these properties are going to be used and allocated, there is no clarity with respect to that. So therefore we see, because of non-codification of customary laws, these community property rights are being destroyed. And then one more provision called as eminent domain, which are there in our land acts, which allows the government to take over any piece of land for development purpose or for public purpose, has constantly been used to take off land which belongs to the community in the interest of the public. Similarly, forest policies, okay, forest laws and other things have given importance to protection of forests, and thereby removing the tribals from their traditional habitation, which includes these community property. And whenever they have been displaced, no compensation has been given to them, because nobody is the owner of that. It's a community who owns the property. So when they are displaced, none of them end up getting any compensation. Not only they are displaced, their livelihood is also destroyed and no compensation is given. So these are all the threats and its impact on the tribal way of life. To substantiate all of that, you need to give examples and case studies. Some of them I have already discussed, some of them you should have already collected from your studies in anthropology. So here is the case study. So at Koratpur district, for building the National Aluminium Corporation's aluminium unit, okay, 60% of the land that was acquired was common property resource. So this shows that for ease of acquiring of land, the government takes over these common property resources without properly compensation. And even today, no compensation has been paid to individuals who are dependent on these resources. Okay, so like this, you need to write examples to substantiate your argument. So this is what you're expected to write in your answer. In the next video, we shall discuss a concept relating to tribes, that is headhunting among the tribes. I hope this was useful. Keep watching. Thank you.